All right, I am recording now.
Yeah, I figured.
Right now, when I said that, I hit the record button.
We were talking about doing dirty things on the internet. If you don't like that, then you should go away now. Also, we're going to say fuck sometimes.
Fuck, shit, balls, damn.
Should fuck some.
So we
I
probably
also
go
talk
ahead.
about the movie It for at least the first half hour.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about menstruation or something equally lovely.
Oh, my God.
Can we do that in combination with It?
Yes.
I just saw the funniest meme today and I laughed so hard. It was like this guy and he was gaming and he was like killing all these people and there was blood everywhere. And then it like fast forwards to like a commercial with like a pad with a little bit of blood on it. And he's like, ah, like he's like freaking out by that, but he's all like excited killing people and there's blood everywhere. He like sees this one little spot of blood and he's like, ah.
That comes from a girl.
Ew, I'm appalled.
Yes.
Anyway, welcome to the Creeping It Real show, y'all.
Yeah.
In case you haven't noticed by the lackadaisical entry that this is a bonus episode, which we try to just...
mispronounced boner.
Boner episode, which I don't know how... If you guys are getting a boner learning about demon experiences, then you're my kind of people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think mine too.
Yeah.
Pantsless, so there's that.
Though I will tell you, I've been reading a lot of stories today, trying to figure out and like sift through what's a ghost story, what's a demon story, or what could be borderline demon enough to put it in our little document here. And everything was fine until I had to walk upstairs in the dark and go into our office for recording. And I was a little heebie-jeebie. I was like, wow, I really got to myself, because usually that doesn't really affect me that much, but I got to myself today, so I think it's
luckily, I added half these stories, and I didn't read them, so
great.
It'll be good to know. I vouch for nothing, and to cold read your own stories is pretty, next level.
Oh, good. I was
like, this looks short and has a punchline. It's in.
Yeah, I think I see demon in here. I think this, reminded me back to, that, which I will remind you back to an old episode we did where I had an experience witnessing an exorcism when I was a child. Now, whether you believe that or not, I fully believed that, and so
eat shrooms. So take it with a grain of salt.
At 13, I just chawed on some shrooms, but no, I did see something, and it did affect me, and so now I was reading all these, and I'm and they describe that feeling of being around somebody who you know is either possessed or evil, and you're like, I know that feeling, I know what that felt like. It's you're frozen with fear. It's never a feeling you'll ever forget, because you're in the company of something so evil that it freezes you in your tracks. And I've been almost picked up by a serial killer. Did not do what this did to me. This was a full-on feeling of just evil that I can never describe again, have never felt again, and probably will never feel again, hopefully. But
hopefully. Yeah.
So reading these it definitely creeped the shit out of me. And then we also have with us again for our bonus episode is Dan the librarian, also over in SoCal. So I am outnumbered on the map this time for our show.
How's that feel, Atlanta people?
I'm sad. Oh, I'm just kidding.
Bad.
So anyway, do we have any other news we want to get by? Because we still have at least another 12 minutes to reach the 15-minute mark of our show. I'm just
not talking about what we said we were going to talk about,
right.
Because we need to give you your money back at the end of this podcast.
Oh, wait. It's free. And, this isn't our fucking day job. So anybody who has an issue with what we talk about, what if we just not listen to it anymore? We probably get, there are so many trolls out there, and if anybody's going to leave a comment, it's going to be the ones that are negative, but it's just one of those things that we like to fuck with you if you do, because they're pretty funny. So
yeah,
we get a kick out of it. Again, we're not getting paid to do this. This isn't our day job. So any of y'all thinking, well, you guys are unprofessional. Well, no shit. This is the literally reason why we have the podcast.
That's the whole point, and that's why our actual fans love us.
We spend all day being professional in a professional setting and having to do grown-up things. So when we do this, we're not trying to get the popular vote. We're trying to be stupid and idiotic. So There is nothing you can say that's going to insult us, really. It's kind of a
Although
compliment.
arguably someone who's stupid and idiotic did get the popular vote, but that's a whole other can of
Well,
worms.
yeah, we don't got that podcast yet, but darn, sometimes I sure wish I'd started one. Whew. I just now my disgusted outlet is just now put into the paranormal, and I try to not focus so much on real life anymore because it's as
True.
scary as the paranormal at this point. So anyway, with that, I hope everybody has stayed dry through the whole hurricane madness going on. Didn't touch us in Atlanta, thankfully. Not yet.
We
anyway,
got wet.
you guys got some rain?
Liked it. But yeah, we had a lot of rain yesterday. It was hot as balls, and it just started pouring, which is not normal for out here.
That sounds like Atlanta.
I got stuck out in the storm. It was interesting.
Yeah, lightning, thunder. It was crazy.
Hey, that sounds like a lot like Atlanta.
We have the wildfires going on at the same time, though, so that's neat.
We get like super, super, super hot and humid, and then rain just falls from the sky and pop-up thunderstorms hit. So that sounds a lot like what we deal with all the time. So
crazy.
Anyway,
it was gone in 45 minutes.
So we're gonna do an episode, and I say "real" in quotes because these are stories from other people.
Yeah, some I know aren't real, but they're probably good stories if I had read them. So deal with that too.
Great. And I have just poured myself a glass of wine, and I have not been drinking, and so Lord knows what this glass of wine is going to do to me. Like, I've stopped drinking pretty much altogether. So Lord knows how that's going to turn out. But moving forward, we're going to talk about demons and some loosely based conversations around demons. Again, we're not listing sources. These are just posts on the internet. There's no big book of demon stories that we're pulling from, so no point in talking about who said that. If it's your story, I'd love for you to reach out to us and tell us more. So if you have your panties in a wad about us talking about it, hey, reach out to us. Also, if you have a crazy paranormal alien, I don't know what the fuck just happened story, we would love to hear from you. I love these stories, so please write to us. You could message us on Twitter or Facebook or my Instagram or Moni's Instagram or Dan's Instagram. You're on Instagram, right, Dan?
I am, but it's a private account.
Okay, never mind. Don't Instagram Dan.
Also, don't shit Dan, because that's what Kristi did say. Is you could Instagram shit Dan.
I said shit Dan.
You did. You meant like shit. You could Instagram Dan, but like you said shit Dan. So
well, yeah.
Which I agree with. Knowing
I've had 2 drinks of wine. I am already off. I need to just call it a day.
Shitting Dan's. It's crazy.
Sorry, Dan.
That's the Dan's. I mean, I'm not even going to end this sentence.
Well, he already has his pants off in preparation.
Right.
I do.
With shorts. Anyway, Kristi, would you like to read the first story?
I will. We will get this started 8 minutes in. I had 2 occurrences in the winter of 2009. By the way, this story happens, they wrote it 7 years ago. So let's take that and put that in our hat. Anyway, the first was... I don't know why I said that, but I just remember when I was like 2009 and I looked at it, oh, this was still 7 years ago. The first was one morning when I was getting ready for work. It was about 6 a.m. My apartment was dark and my front door was open because my girlfriend was just outside smoking, waiting for me. I was doing something in the living room and I saw a figure move past me in my peripherals. I assumed it was my girlfriend. I shivered for no reason. The figure had moved towards the back of the apartment. So about 20 seconds later, I called back and asked if she was ready to go. She poked her head out from outside and said yes. I freaked the fuck out and ran outside. She swore nothing went into the apartment. Fast forward about 2 weeks, I dismissed what had happened as grogginess and moved on. I didn't have a car at the time and my girlfriend wasn't around that morning, so I was walking to work. It was about the same time as the last event, a dark winter morning. Once again, in my peripherals, I saw a figure moving. Seemed to be keeping pace with me. I just got goosebumps typing this now, he says, by the way. It was to my left, a wide open field area with some trees. When I looked over, there was a shadowy figure mirroring my exact stance about 30 feet away. I didn't think, didn't scream. I just took off full sprint the last 3/4 of a mile to work. Hello.
No, thank you.
These are all a big pile of notes, all of these stories.
Mhm.
So get
True.
ready to sleep with one eye open. Sorry. I was getting ready to say sleep with the lights on, but then Metallica possessed me and I had to do it. So
It happened.
it happens.
Do we need to excise Metallica out of you?
Yes. No, if they're in me, then I'm cool with it.
Dan's turn.
So my turn, moving on, completely ignoring the last 20 seconds. Until a few years ago, I still had a flip phone. One day, I got a random call asking for some girl named Sarah. I told them they had the wrong number, and then they hung up. For the next few months, I would not get these calls For the next few months, I would get these calls asking for Sarah about once or twice a week, coming from different number and different sounding people. Sometimes these calls came at 3 in the morning. One day I got a call, and like usual, I said I didn't know Sarah. After they hung up, I went to my contacts and hit redial. The answering machine said that the number did not exist. I went back through my call history trying to call some other people that had called me with the same result. The machine telling me the number did not exist. Every time I would get these calls, I would redial the number and still get the machine. I Googled the numbers, but all I learned was they were coming from North Dakota, Montana, basically everywhere in the Midwest. The next time I got a call asking for Sarah, I said, "Oh yeah, she is right here." And the other person on the other end said, "No, she isn't," and hung up. Things started getting weird when I started getting calls from unknown numbers calling me. Whoever or whatever on the other end hung up on the second I said hello. Once I got a call where they didn't hang up after I said hello and I could hear someone was on the other end, just listening, but they didn't say anything. Just something really uneasy about it. Hadn't experienced anything like it since. Don't know how I feel about it to this day.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
That's bizarre. All right, I have another quick little one here. When I was about 17, I woke up in the middle of the night, thirsty, and went to the kitchen to get some water. When I walked into the kitchen and flipped on the light, I saw what I can only describe as a large golem-looking creature. It looked me in the face and then screeched, a noise I will never forget, and then crawled on the walls into the unlit part of the house.
Nope.
Oh, thank you. While I wasn't sleeping or dreaming, I ran into my room and turned on music and did not sleep the rest of the night. I've only told a handful of people about it, and yes, I am completely serious.
Fuck that.
There was,
Sheesh.
so after he wrote that, there were like a shit ton of replies and questions. I mean, he didn't really have anything else. And he just kind of explained it as like human height and like a thinner kind of creature. And yes, it scurried up the wall and like went into the, I mean,
That's
that
horror
just,
movie shit.
yeah, I mean, that freaks me the fuck out. Just no, thank you. I don't know how you would stay in the house. Like for me,
I would have driven and slept in the night in the police station parking lot.
Oh, I would have gone to my church or something. Like not my church. I don't have a church, but I would have gone to a church, like, and slept on their doorstep or something.
Like in the holy water.
Pretty much, like poured holy water on me. Found a priest. Found a monk. Found every kind of the pope. Something like seriously. Like and this happens a lot. And I've talked to people where they've seen weird things or ghosts, and then they just stay in the house. Fuck that. Like any of these things. Like I would have been noped out of there and never, like you couldn't convince me to come back in my house.
Nope.
Although I did see something one time and but I was so confused and kind of like, huh? And it took me like hours to think about it to realize what I saw. So but then I never went into my bedroom for like alone for like the next 6 months. So I did like eventually go, okay, I know what I saw. That's fucked up. I ain't going in there again for a while by myself. So anyway, it's just bizarre to me how they just kind of be like, all right, I'm just going to go to my room.
Nice.
Anyway.
So the next one, to be honest, I don't know if what I experienced was truly demon possession or what, but it was scary nonetheless. When I was 19, I kept seeing black figures following me out of the corner of my eye. They always wore hats. My mental health was slowly deteriorating at that point, which could have been the main issue, but I'll still continue my story. Just felt lonely and didn't have many friends. I started getting awful nightmares not long after that, and then started feeling even more off mentally. One night before I fell asleep, I was fully aware and capable of my body, so it wasn't a night terror. I felt two claws clutch my throat and start choking me. There wasn't anyone in the room. I felt my body push further in the bed while I tried to get these invisible hands off my throat. It stopped after I prayed. I'm not very religious, but man, I prayed a lot that night. The day after that, I wasn't actually there in my head. I felt compelled to behave strangely, even though it wasn't really me doing it. That night, though, as I was trying to get into a good spot to go to sleep, I felt a surge of hatred fill my body and completely push me out of my physical self. I just floated next to my bed, watching myself convulsing and screaming. The next night, I woke up after another awful nightmare with an outline of a humanoid being next to my bed. At this point, I had enough of this bullshit and told it to fuck off and went back to sleep. Haven't had any more problems of that nature since then. Still get the occasional whisper out of thin air or black figures following, but never to this level. And yes, I've been checked by the doctors and they say that I'm fine.
Wow. I mean, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you.
Oh, I was just going to say my kid had a dream that a bunch of little creatures with no necks, just bodies, the heads attached to arms, were coming after her last night.
Mm-hmm.
And they were telling her they were hungry and trying to bite her.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that wasn't the kid that keeps saying she sees things around here. So
It was a different one.
Yeah, that's my big kid. That's the nightmare she had last night. Pretty creepy, right?
It is creepy.
That is creepy.
Yeah.
Very creepy. Everybody says that, I mean, this is if you believe that people can be possessed, like having that attitude of like, fuck off, like not ignoring it, but like confronting it and being angry helps or supposed to help with that shit. But I mean, I don't know for sure, but they always say like if you confront it head on and I'm like, fuck off, fuck you, leave me the fuck alone, that they will leave you alone because you're stronger than what they originally kind of thought. And so they're not even going to mess with you. They're like, oh, he is mentally weak, not weak. Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, that kind of confidence works with real life bullies too. 9 times out of 10, something doesn't want to fight. It wants easy, whatever its intentions are. It wants to be able to get there with the least possible resistance. And so, telling it to fuck off can often work.
I agree. That's what I hear anyway. But all right, next story. I don't know if it counts, but I once had a severe case of sleep paralysis in which I was attacked by a demon. I'm extremely religious. And so when I saw the figure slowly crawling around my walls and ceiling, I knew exactly what it was. I tried
that always
to scream.
Gets me, the crawling around the walls.
Yeah, that ain't natural. I tried to scream for my parents, but the demon caught my voice and wouldn't let it sound more than a wisp. It then proceeded to tell me it was coming to get me before suddenly vanishing. On a separate occasion, there was this hallway in our house that none of us used very often, but I would go there to play as a child. I turned around while playing to see a fully grown man without legs come rushing towards me with his mouth open, as if he was screaming. I remember ducking and running away. Never told my parents because I didn't want them to think I was possessed. Okay.
Hello?
Dan?
I'm here. I was just
okay.
absorbing the joy of half man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I thought of Scooby-Doo when they said I don't know what it was.
I
don't know what it was, but for some reason the Scooby-Doo like cartoon popped into my head of this man like with like no legs. I don't know.
like the 60s version.
Yeah, like Scooby-Doo is not. It's not in the 60s, was it? Shit, I'm not.
70s, whatever the animation.
But like but it was literally like what the characters look like everything just as Anyway, I don't know. It's just me probably compartmentalizing.
It happens.
All right. I will admit, before I start reading this, when I saw NSW Australia, I read it as NSFW Australia.
Yeah, I was very confused as well, actually.
So I don't think Australia is safe for work at all. But anyway, moving along. Let's try this again. I frequently darn it. Okay.
This is bushwhacking.
All right. I'm clearly can't be the only one drinking. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's just sometimes my inability to actually read a word correctly, so it comes out hysterical.
You guys are literally do this for a living, so I'm calling y'all some
What
bullshit.
for a living?
Yeah.
Read spooky stories or bushwhack?
Yeah. and not safe for work Australia. We bushwhack all the time.
All day. Down under and we bushwhack. It's fine.
Ready, Dan?
I don't think I can follow up. I'm going to just... Okay, let me just... I frequently go bush walking.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's pretty hysterical. Screw it. I frequently go bushwhacking all throughout the Blue Mountains, NSW, Australia, and have done since I was a kid with my dad. Sometimes for shorter walks, I would go alone. Yeah, that could be dangerous, and as a woman, could have added risk of being attacked or whatever.
A bushwhacking woman. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but wasn't going to say it.
Okay.
Thank you, Kristi.
You're welcome.
But I carry a couple of knives with me, so I don't really feel threatened, and always bring a satellite phone. I just love and crave that feeling of being entirely surrounded by the bush.
Stop!
I'm sorry. I saw this like, oh God, it's not going to Anywho.
Oh my God, I'm crying right now. Because I was trying not to laugh, but it wasn't going to.
I know it's a serious topic, but damn, she loves being correct.
I'm sorry, Australians. I know that, this all makes sense to you guys, but Americans find this hella funny, so... This is how they talk. I just think it's hysterical. I like to be surrounded by the bush, too. Anyway.
Don't we all? Yeah, hey, yeah. Anyway, right there. Anyway, around 5 years ago, I thought it would be a good idea to do an overnighter walk by myself. Shit idea. The walk was fine. 3 or 4 groups of people came by the other way on the first day. Picked a little area to stay overnight towards dusk. Cut a few ferns back and had a space to stick my little one-person tent. I was maybe 30 meters from the track, mostly out of sight behind trees and such. The usual wildlife noises were going on as I drifted to sleep, though there was a strange noise. I can only describe it as a bounding sound, like someone was sprinting through the bush right past me. But when it... Straight down, don't laugh. But it went by way too fast with too few steps to carry a person that distance. Also, if you've ever seen the bush in this part of Australia, you know that there isn't much space on the ground to walk freely if you're off the track. Next morning, I don't even know what the heck that is.
It means breakfast.
Thank you. Next morning, I had brekkie.
Brekkie in the bush.
Brekkie in the bush. I was with an Australian guy for 2 years and went to Australia many times, so I'm very familiar with this verbiage, but the bush still just can't stop laughing about that.
Yeah, see, now I have the brekkie in the bush in my head as like Beauty and the Beast song from the movie.
See, anyway, I was thinking Smokey and the Bandit, but you do you.
I think Smokey and the Bandit's more hysterical.
I kept thinking.
I am on mute because I can't stop giggling.
Okay, only 3 more paragraphs, people. Bear with us.
You can do it.
Deep breaths, deep breaths.
Get that bush.
Oh, God. Oh, God. There's a line coming up or we're going to lose it. Okay. Next morning, I had brekkie and packed up my things and kept going along the track. Passed a couple of people going the other way, then was alone again for maybe half an hour. Then I heard the sound of a stick being broken, like from someone stepping on it. The sound came from behind me and to my left, away from the track. I turned around to look and nearly fucking died on my feet. A fair distance into the bush was something standing there and looking directly at me. I wanted to believe it was a person, but it wasn't. I couldn't judge the exact height, but was obviously very tall, I guess 9 feet. Its skin was dark gray or brownish and had a horrifically large head with huge black eyes. I couldn't see a mouth or anything. Its arms and legs were really long. I was almost crying. Tears welled up in my eyes. Completely frozen, staring at this creature, it was like my legs were locked in position. The longer the stare went on between me and the creature, I had this ever-heightening feeling of absolute dread, like nothing I'd ever felt before. The fear built up until I could see my heartbeat in veins in my vision. And suddenly I bolted. I sprinted away, continuing on the track. I ran and was too scared to look behind me. Tears were streaming from my eyes as I was running away. I didn't stop until I was actually caught up with some people going the same direction as me. They looked at me and were saying, "Oh my God, are you all right?" I was fucked from running so hard for so long, and I told them I saw something in the bush and asked if I could walk with them the rest of the way.
I hate when you're fucked from being
We
in a
did
bush
it.
so hard.
It's over,
we're
Dan. You
professionals.
can breathe.
I don't know if I can.
He's going to have to be on mute to do his giggling, too. It sounds a lot like mine, actually. So.
Yes, and how does that sound?
Well, I can't just do it impromptu. That's a fake giggle.
True. I could do one of my really horrible puns.
No, those aren't funny.
I mean, I could get a pity laugh.
True. Or I could tell the next story.
Let's tell the next story, Dan. Sorry, no offense, but...
No, I'm going to give one. I read my audiences.
Aww,
we don't need no more reviews. I'll tell you that right now.
You got this other guy doing puns.
I came here to listen to scary stories, not dad jokes.
Yeah.
Oh, now hang on.
Not push jokes either.
Hey, that was impossible to ignore.
Yeah. Getting my brekkie in the bush and totally fucked. Anyway,
that's why that's how I'm going to refer to sex from today on.
Have some brekkie in the bush.
You want some brekkie in the bush? We love you, Australia. We really do. We really do.
We do. I know we're not really making it sound like it, talking about your down under this way,
think that
but
they can appreciate it.
I too will also be referring to it from this day forward as that.
Brekkie in the bush. All right, so the story I'm about to tell was told to me by one of my best friends. Last year, he went to Pennsylvania as an au pair. Au pair? That's how you say it, right? The nannies? And his host parents lived in a large colonial house. Oh, maybe they're not nannies. I don't know. I hope it's the right translation. That's how we call those kind of houses here in Italy. One day he had to do the laundry, but he was home alone with a little boy he was supposed to take care of. Oh, yeah, so he is a nanny. And decided to take the kid to the basement with him so he could do both. While he was washing the clothes, he heard the child talking to himself. He thought he was talking to him, so he went near the boy and asked what he had been saying. The boy said that he wasn't talking to him, but to his grandma. My friend was not frightened because he's a rational person. So he thought the child was joking or that maybe he had an imaginary friend. He went back to the washing machine room and the kid continued to sit talking in the corner. Nothing else happened for days, but a couple of months later, my friend was doing the laundry again and was home alone with the little boy. They went to the basement and the same thing happened. The child started talking to someone in the corner of the room, saying that he was talking to his grandma. This time, my friend was a bit worried, mostly about the child being crazy or something, so he told what happened to the parents. They immediately called a psychic, as one does, not a doctor, fucking psychic, without saying to her anything specific about where all this happened and who the child saw. As soon as the psychic came to the house, she went directly to the basement and stared at the same corner where the little boy used to sit and talk to himself. She said that she could feel something bad happen there, and she suggested that the parents search archives if something had happened in this house before they bought it. They found out that the previous owners were an old couple and that the man killed his wife. They had found her body in the corner of the basement. So probably the boy, who had never met his grandma, saw an old lady and immediately thought that she was his grandmother.
Ooh, okay. There it is. I was like, wait a minute. I lost my space.
Hey, look, it's another Australian story.
Okay. Let's hope there's no big, other languages that we're going to think that have to do with penises or vaginas.
Oh my God, that vagina in the courtroom. I was listening to our last episode this morning. Poor Yardley.
Holy hell.
When I was assigning like the names to that, and I was like, oh my God, but I had already had made the weird news, and so I was trying to do the order, with the news order, and so I was like, oh my God, of two girls and a guy, the guy has to read the one where the real vagina is on a projector in the courtroom,
Nicely done.
I don't see a problem with that.
Hey, you gave Dan a brekkie in a bush. So
I did. Well, you gave it to him, not me.
That's true.
You can thank Moni for that one. All right. I'm going to tackle this next Australian one. You love you, Australia. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Oi, oi, oi. Okay, I'm ready.
I appreciate that.
I'm trying to call out my peoples in Australia to let them know that I truly do love their country, because Australia is freaking awesome. So, oh no, see another Australian bush word. Okay, let's see.
Oh, and there's a few other parts where I'm going to be giggling. So.
Stop. Okay, here we go. I live in a small town in rural Australia. I'm a cyclist and I coordinate sports events, marathons, sell bikes and gear and whatnot. Around 6 a.m. this morning, I drove my bike up the mountain, and on the way, I passed a woman sitting by the side of the road. At first, I thought she could have been a hitchhiker, but there's no hotels around here, and she had no bags. That's a problem. I stopped my car about 400 meters away from her, grabbed a bottle of water out of the car boot, that's the trunk in America, which shocker. Guess you guys could have figured that out, and walked down to see what was going on. At this moment, I realized she's one of the most gorgeous women I have ever seen. Demon! Sorry.
Brown, chicka, brown, brown.
She was probably about 20, pale as fuck.
They want to have some brekkie in the bush.
Mm-hmm. Pale as fuck, long wavy hair to her hips, and one of those really German kind of hourglass figures. Like German, though? German?
I don't know.
I would think that was more like a Swedish thing, but okay. Anyway, really blue eyes. Like, this chick was crazy hot. Was wearing those long summer dresses that beach kids seem to love, which was freaking weird for the middle of the Australian bush. So I'm walking towards her like, oh my God, but I'm also thinking, what the fuck? I hand her the bottle of water and ask if she's lost or needs a lift back to town. She just stares. Doesn't take the water, no blinking. I think, oh shit, she's some kind of a crazy. So I asked her if she ran away from somewhere, and she just said no and hadn't blinked yet. So I asked if she's waiting for someone to come pick her up, and she said no again. I asked her where her house is, and she just said, here. I'm halfway up a mountain. There's no houses around here. So I was kind of starting to get creeped out by this lady. I walked back to my Jeep. I was going to drive back down to the mountain and call the cops and get them to come sort this lady out because the signal's bad and you can't do it there. And she follows me. I was like, look, are you sure you don't want me to run you back to town? She just says no again. So I'm all, look, I don't feel comfortable leaving you here in the middle of nowhere. Please let me take you to the police station. And she turns around and walks off into the bush, miles from anywhere. And I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck? Then I really started to get scared when the bug and bird noises started to come back. It made me realize I hadn't heard a single other sound while I was talking with her. Like no magpies, no crickets, no early morning sounds at all. I hightailed the fuck out of there and called the local coppers when I reached the bottom of the mountain. Basically just said I saw a woman up the mountain who refused to get in my car, and then I realized how fuck that sounded and hung up. There's this chick who won't get in the car with me. That would have been funny.
Yeah, there's better ways to put that.
Yeah.
He's the crazy one, but yeah. At least we got to say fuck a lot, so there you go. This next one is actually fiction, but it's still fun.
Oh, the dolls one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The dolls are alive. I can't say exactly what woke me. A nightmare. I figured, given that my heart was beating quite quickly, I didn't remember any details. I took a deep breath and rolled over, already falling half asleep again. I found myself face to face with a dark figure on the pillow beside me. I yelped and sat up, grabbed at my phone, my nearest source of light, and shined it towards my bed. Fred was laying on his side beside me. I let out a small chuckle, gave myself a little shake to dismiss the lingering fright that he'd caused, and picked him up. Did you fall off the shelf? I asked him quietly. I must have put him back too close to the edge earlier and grabbed he had done it. Had done duty. I gave Fred a gentle squeeze. Get out.
Oh, the doll told her to get out. I don't like it.
And that's why I don't have dolls.
Yeah.
I have never liked dolls, man. Nope. And a big no for a doll. No, thank you. I don't need any other humanoid beings being in my room with me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So, my father spent the latter days of his career as a fire safety director at a massive mental asylum. Our state version of OSHA has come to and do inspections at all facilities. His was no exception, so the OSHA inspectors made their way to an abandoned part of the facility that used to house the criminally insane, the absolute worst of the worst. Serial killers, rapists. I thought it said cannabis. I'm like, that's the worst of the worst. Cannibals. Okay, that's fucked up, etc. My father left them with keys and a flashlight because the electricity didn't work. The inspectors were radioing back to my father that they kept hearing talking and footsteps, which was impossible. Not even squatters could move around because each section is isolated with locked doors to prevent escape. Eventually, the inspectors gave up and actually flee without finishing. My dad decides to stick around and check the alarm boxes that they hadn't. As he is checking one of the alarms, he feels as if someone is watching him from down the hall. As he looks, a shadow forms with a head, shoulders, torso, but no legs, and just two holes where there should be eyes. My dad noped the hell out of there. Yeah, and then
That's
the
a
same
new
story. I worked.
No, that's
there's
a new story.
Quality control. Okay, so that's a really freaky story.
Mm-hmm.
And the next story,
Okay,
I'll do it because this one was.
Yeah, go real quick. So I got this these stories from a thread that was basically this call out to cops and other law enforcement people of Reddit. Like, what were the cases you worked that made you think that something supernatural, paranormal was going on? And also, like, nurses and stuff chimed in as well. And it, seriously, I have been reading that for days. Like, it was a year ago that the thread came up, and I had just found it when I was starting to do our research. If you guys want to read some crazy shit, they weren't all to do with demons, so I didn't, like, I tried to do some that could be demons, but the thread though is like I think it's 1,500 comments long, and holy shit, like there's some crazy shit on there. So this is another one, this forensic nurse. So anyway, I just want to explain why there's going to be a lot of intermittent like cops or firemen and shit like that.
There's also a pretty decent horror movie, and I can't remember for the life of me what it's called, but it actually is based off of a true story of a police officer stumbling upon what ends up being demon possession case. So anyway, I wish I could remember. I would recommend it. I worked as a forensic nurse in a lockup unit in a hospital once with state and county inmates. Had one older demented lady who swore she was being haunted or abused by a demon that she would call Tiberius. So many crazy things happened whenever she was there. Like, we'd go into the room, do normal care, leave, and seconds later she'd start screaming bloody murder, and we'd run into the room to find her looking like she'd been in a fight with a boxing champ. Bloody lip, black eye, markings all over her body. No one ever saw her doing this stuff to herself. Things would get moved around the room by themselves, like at one point she was in protective restraints because the doc thought she was hurting herself. There was no way she could have moved or done anything to herself while in the restraints, but new marks would always appear on, or her tray or cart would be across the room. The room was secure, so there was no way someone else was doing this. You'd ask her questions and she'd just say it was Tiberius. After she was discharged, she always had trouble with that room. If there was going to be a rapid response or code, it happened in that room. Oh, they had trouble in that room. One of the guards reporting the lights going on and off in a room, it was always that one.
Mm-hmm. Tiberius. Mm-hmm. A lot of people were commenting in here that Tiberius actually is in the Bible, and he was a mad king, and has been accused of things in the past, almost like a demon-ish, like quote unquote. So it was just interesting that that was the name that she gave this person. But
Yeah, that's creepy.
anyway, okay, so mine is I can see people's auras and it's a curse. The brightest person I ever saw worked as a social worker. She shone so bright it was difficult for me to even look at her. Based on the way people acted in her presence, I think that almost everyone around her could sense her brightness in a subconscious way. Everyone loved her. She had donated a kidney to someone she barely even knew. She had a special needs adopted child. Most of the money she earned was donated to various charities, and that's only the little that I knew of her. This woman shined so brightly that she scared me. She was scary that someone could be so good. But it wasn't nearly as scary as the darkest person I ever saw. I was 20 years old at the time, leaving a club downtown at 2 a.m. A man quietly walked down the street. I didn't see him at first, but I noticed the light dimming around me. This man was so dark that he partly absorbed the light around him. I looked at him long and hard. He looked desperate, cruel, and callous. When he looked up and locked eyes with me, it made me fall back. He smirked as though he knew what I could see. I saw his face up close. I would never forget it, and I recognized it when I saw his mugshot a few weeks later in the newspaper. He had murdered his ex-wife and 2 children in cold blood. I think I need to get to it now, the reason why I'm writing this out. I fell in love a year ago. She didn't shine anywhere near as bright as what I've seen before, but she most assuredly wasn't dark or even dim. She was beautiful, her sense of humor, her wit, her everything. She was my dream woman, and I've never told her anything at all about the auras I see. I could go into far more about her, but this isn't a love story. What's important is this. We fell in love, she got pregnant, we got married, we were happy, we were so happy. I remember hearing the buzz of my phone 2 mornings ago. I remember my excitement when I saw It's Happening come to the hospital. I remember my frustration when I got stuck in traffic. I remember how long it took to find a parking spot. I remember shouting at a nurse, "What room is my wife in?" I remember bursting through the door and seeing the smile on my wife's face. I remember seeing the doctor, his light shining so bright as he told me, "Congratulations, it's a boy." The doctor held him up to me, and all that light in the room dissipated. Is that it?
Yeah.
What happened? I don't get it.
Just the way that when he saw the really dark guy, all the lights around disappeared.
Phew. Okay.
When he saw his son, all the lights disappeared. So that's not a good sign.
I get it now. Okay, it took me a minute. I'm like, what? What happened? What happened? Okay, whew. I get it now. Thank you.
Like, what would you do if your kid turned out to be a demon when it was born?
That would suck. I don't know.
That would suck.
Suck the light out.
Yeah, a little bit.
I would name him Demon, and we would... Gosh, what do demons do?
Have a really cool metal band.
Have some metal? Yeah. Hey, I mistakenly found that out today. Apparently, there's demon metal. God, I read way too many stories or videos going into I see demons, and it's actually demon metal. And I'm like, fuck you for wasting my time. I got shit to do today. Demon metal. All right, Dan, you go.
Alrighty. Before my dad became a state police officer, he did some security work at a big factory. He's not normally a superstitious person, so when he told me the story with such a weird seriousness to it, it scared the shit out of me. He always said, I don't mess with that stuff regarding supernatural things. But anyway, the story is in the early 80s. While working at the factory, he always had a night shift. It was just him and the big-ass factory. He had his own little room where he watched TV, listened to the radio, and do whatever. But the rest of the factory, for the part besides the X's, was dark. His job was to actually patrol the factory every hour. He'd get up, grab his flashlight, and just around the place, going down row by row, picking his head out to the left, to the right. One night, he set out to do his usual run with a flashlight in hand, but he could not see that something was. But he could see that something was unusual to his when he walked out into the dark. You know that sensation you get when your eyes are just in the room and you can just start making out certain objects but nothing full or whole? There was something darker in the main hall or row, and it was moving. He paused for a minute, and as his eyes fully adjusted, there seemed to be nothing. He took a second to swipe the factory with his light, and then decided that he was just seeing things. He went down into the main row and started his run. Everything was normal, nothing out of the ordinary. Although he was still a bit on edge, seeing as the factory without a big moving shadow was creepy enough, when the rows of the factory ended, there was a big open area at the end. This was the entrance to the factory. Normally there would be a light at the front door, but tonight it had dimmed lower. He thought that was weird and really began to sweat. So instead of investigating any further, he turned for the escalator and went to go back into the main row and get up to his room. That's when in the corner of his eye, on the right side, he could see what he described as a black cloaked figure. His light hit it, and he saw it, tall and distinctly human-like. But he didn't stop. He just went right back to his room, locked the door, and stayed in there until it was light out. He left the factory and called the owner to tell him he wouldn't be returning to the job. I don't blame him.
I don't blame him either.
Nope.
Oh.
Okay. Does anybody else hear little children?
That's my
I
kid.
do.
That's my kid
Okay.
talking to the dog. Sorry. He goes,
Okay, I'm just making sure because I don't hear my kids. I'm like, that's kind of creepy that I hear little children
sorry.
when we're talking about like demons and stuff. So
That's my kid.
it's all good. It sets the tone. I like it.
Yes,
So-
background.
Did you not hear me giggle after he said it? I was like, oh God. I could hear him going, Ivy Beady.
Yeah, I just heard da-da-da-da. I was like, ooh, creepy. Okay.
So it is creepy. I just know it, my kid. So
So these are based off of true crime stories of supposed demon possession. A North Carolina man performed animal sacrifices before turning to murdering human beings. Pizazu Algarad was arrested in 2014 for killing a person and then burying his body in the backyard in July of 2009, as well as helping his girlfriend bury someone she'd killed later that year.
damn.
He took the name... Huh?
His girlfriend and him just like killing people, huh?
Killing people left and right.
All right. Cool.
He had taken the name Pazuzu in reference to a demon mentioned in The Exorcist, and he had a forked tongue and sharpened teeth. An anonymous man who lived at the home where the bodies were buried told the police that he felt Pazuzu was possessed. It was very serpentine, and his eyes would get kind of like glazy, like almost not there. Like the inner part of him would kind of phase away. You could tell when his demons needed something from him because they took over. About once a month, I have demons take me over once a month, but that's a different story. It's usually on a full moon. They sacrificed at least one rabbit, and then he would eat the heart of it and then burn the flesh of the rabbit. Investigators on the scene later deemed the home, the site of many animal sacrifices, was unsafe for human life.
Don't you think if you had him as a roommate, you'd be moving out?
Yeah. I'm going to have to break this lease.
Yeah, right?
I just watched an episode of Twisted Sister on Discovery ID, and it was really interesting. The mother, so it was a grandma living on the first floor. It was a 2-story home, and then the mother and her 3 daughters living on the second floor. And she was like convinced that her mother, the girl's grandmother, was like a witch, and had gotten really into witchcraft herself. So then had identified her mother, which was not true at all, and the mother ended up killing her own daughter, thinking she was possessed, and like killed her because they couldn't get the spirit out. They couldn't get the demon out. Like killed her for that. So then the state evaluated her. Everybody evaluated her and decided she wasn't sane to go to trial. So she went to a mental institution and was released like 4 years later. And now she's just out there living her life.
Living the dream.
4
Nice.
years in a mental institution, and then bye.
Only I could get rid of a daughter that easy.
Fucking
What?
crazy, man. Seriously, though. Like, can you imagine? It blows my mind. Anyway, all right, here we are in 1974. Hey, that's the year I was born. Anyway, in 1974, Michael Taylor was just a simple butcher living in Ossett, England, who was suddenly overcome by an evil spirit. He had an exorcism performed October 5th and 6th of 1974. And while it went okay, the priests weren't able to expel all the demons. According to Bill Ellis, an authority on folklore and the occult in contemporary culture, an all-night ceremony the exorcists believed they had invoked and cast out at least 40 demons, including those of incest, bestiality, blasphemy, and lewdness. At the end, exhausted, they allowed Taylor to go home, although they felt that at least 3 demons, insanity, murder, and violence, were still left in him. So, the big 3. After he returned home, I heard about this, Taylor immediately murdered his wife by ripping out her eyes and tongue, then tearing off most of the skin from her face, finally strangling their pet poodle. Police found Taylor standing in the street naked and covered in blood, shouting, "It is the blood of Satan."
Well, that's a lovely bedtime story.
Ooh, that's a nice little refreshing...
Bloodbath?
Yeah, like a little tale. Woo! Have a little drink of wine with that one.
Hail Satan? No.
Hail
I can't.
Satin!
Good old Satin.
Satin's fantastic.
Satin sheets.
Mm-hmm. Satin is wonderful.
I'm a fan. All right. I think this is the last one.
Is it?
All right. Yes, I think so.
What?
Scroll. I mean, for me to read.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, before I get totally confused, in 1981, a 19-year-old Arnie, I don't know, Cheyenne Johnson stabbed 40-year-old Ellen Bono to death after arguing over Johnson's girlfriend. After being picked up by the police, Johnson gave the immortal defense, "Devil made me do it." Rather than balk at his claims, every paranormal investigator worth their salt flocked to Connecticut to interview Johnson and find out if he was truly possessed. According to Ed and Lorraine Warren, the paranormal investigators who helped make the Amityville case so famous, Johnson had become possessed when he threatened to fight one of the collection of 43 demons who were living inside his 11-year-old brother. As Johnson's trial went on, the Paranormal Society split down the middle. The most vocal opponent of the Warrens, continuing to support Johnson, was the amazing Kristi, who noted that the murder was simply a means for the couple to prey on the superstitions of the public and build up their annual lecture revenues. After a judge denied the demonic possession angle that the defense was trying to play, Johnson's team didn't have a leg to stand on, and the killer was eventually convicted of manslaughter. Johnson received the maximum sentence of 20 years and was released for good behavior after serving over just 4 years at the Connecticut Correctional Institute in Summers.
Yeah.
Sounds like he should have served much longer than 4 years.
Yeah.
I feel like the subtitle of this one is How to Get Away with, very little time for murder.
Well, yeah, especially my story that I just told that's not even on here. And then after that, this one. And I didn't know that you were going to be telling this kind of story. So, yeah, pretty much. Hey, demons. Well, I have, let me see. We do have a little bit of time left unless we just want to cut it short. We're at 53 minutes.
I just don't have any other stories.
Well, I do, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, in that case.
I say do it.
Do it. Do it. Do it.
Get some brekkie in that bush, girl.
Some brekkie in the bush?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see what we got here. I have stories up. These might not be demon related. I haven't vetted them, so don't be mad at me if that's hey, bitch, that's not a demon. And then I say, okay.
It's 15 minutes and I didn't get to hear any demon stories. I want my money back.
I'm worried how well you do that voice.
She's heard it before. She's heard it before. Okay. Okay, so here's some interesting, let's see, Saint Entropy. Who it did? Oh, these are books. You know what makes me angry, and I love that people love these, is like creepy pasta. Like I don't care. If you're not telling me that it happened to you, I don't want to read it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad I'm not alone on this.
Dollars and cents, girl.
I have nothing to say after that. Moni beat me to it.
Put those dollar bills in. Never mind. Anyway.
I wish that my sister had emailed me. So or texted me. I texted her and said, "Hey, you know, tell me some good experiences that you had in the house that we were in." And she said, let me ponder. She hasn't responded.
She's still pondering.
She's pondering still. So ponder it, for
It's
fuck's sake.
a lot of pondering.
So I'm going to be going to Santa Fe next week. And I'm thinking about checking some spots out and seeing what's up with that too. And we're staying at a hotel that is like Japanese inspired and stuff. So I'm going to check and see what's going on there. See if we got any good spots, if I can get some good photos or check out some notoriously haunted stuff in Santa Fe. I mean, it is,
Nice.
of course, notoriously haunted. So I just don't know where I'm going to be. I'm supposed to be there for my sister's birthday, but what is that sound?
I moved my microphone.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
It sounded weird.
It's
It was
demons.
like, and I was like, what
It's
happened?
demons.
Demons!
You know
They
how it goes.
like.
Oh, man. So all of these, okay, I'm not going to read them because they're all stories that people wrote that are like 1,000,000 pages long, and I ain't reading that shit. So we can just chit chat and, go from there. But yeah, so I'm going to try to scope out some Santa Fe stuff while I'm there. Maybe catch some good stuff. And again, I implore all of you to please reach out to us and tell us your stories, because we love to hear scary stories. And I think we're pretty open-minded. We're not going to call you bullshit or tell you you're
No.
fucking crazy.
Christy will believe anything you tell
I
her.
totally
so.
will. Yeah, you're like, hey, I have free candy in my van. I'm like, cool, let's go, man. Especially if you say you got puppies and you're like, I'll be like, okay.
Yeah. Puppies and wine in my van.
Rock on, and candy. Because I'm on keto right now and I could really go for some candy. So
I'm afraid where this is going.
I mean, come get us in your creepy van. So.
Basically, you can abduct me. What is wrong with that, Dan? What are you scared of?
I'm not going to answer because I would like to be invited back for another show.
I can't.
I am trying to find a ghost story about Black Star Canyon because Dan and I are going to be hiking it in like a week or two.
About two weeks.
Black Star Canyon is located in Orange County and sort of in the Irvine area.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be famously haunted by the phantoms of Spanish conquistadors. But there's also a lot of dangerous living humans that live out that way who might shoot you when you're back there. And there's also a whole lot of tales of people doing like black magic and things like that have caused the woods to be haunted. So we are going back there for a ghost hike, a guided one. So if we don't make it back, that's where we were, y'all. So,
get some good video.
Yeah. And then we can have my husband start the debate that, dust spots are not orbs, but whatever. Haters.
Hey, we didn't even need that we didn't even need dust orbs when we were at the hotel in San Jose.
Yeah, we had a ghost encounter.
Crazy shit.
So.
Although I think it's just kind of when you have two people like us together, weird shit's going to happen. Not because we're crazy, but because it's just like drawn there. Like,
I mean both, but yeah.
Yeah, we're crazy, but go ahead.
Part of me would be curious to see what would happen with you two around, with me around, if we get a response or not.
Well, you get responses when you're with me, so probably the two of us would be like a lightning rod. I don't know.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
I actually see something.
You guys both need to come here, and I'll have to take you to like the Civil War areas. Like they're just like a block, like they're just like a mile away from here,
Nice.
and all the little areas that are basically used to be cemeteries but are now homes, and like that people are digging up coffins out of their driveways and shit. Like there's some
Nice.
crazy stuff
That's
going
some
on around here.
poltergeist shit right there.
Totally,
It
though.
really-
I mean, like, they had to get that somewhere, and I didn't know that until I started, experiencing it here. But even, the other day I was driving home, and not 2 blocks from my house, there's an old cemetery, and then there's our road right there.
I would walk up the road.
Like
I would do it.
but it's literally on our main road, like going to our house. So it's the cemetery on one side, cemetery on the other side, road. And I can guarantee you that is not just was like that. Like when they were, planning in the 1800s, gosh, there's probably going to be a major road fair here. So, I mean, I just can't imagine that we're not driving over a bunch of fucking coffins. So,
I guarantee you are.
oh, I know I am. And we're talking literally like 2 blocks from my house. That's just and that's nothing compared to the stuff when you get down to the historic area where the Civil War shit is. And then, I mean, Atlanta, is notoriously like historical. And so we'd have some fun. We'd have a lot of fun here. So I provide and ask and request that you guys now come here to Atlanta and have us we can do a Atlanta ghost like jaunt. I think it would be fun.
That would be cool as hell.
Yeah, I would go. I'm in.
I'm totally down.
I almost moved my mic again, but I didn't want to get yelled at. So.
Because it was really loud when you did that.
Your mom is very loud when I do that. It's the demons. I didn't hear anything on my end. You're making stuff up.
Demons. Well, when you go back and listen to this, you're gonna be like, "Damn those demons!"
Record scratch.
That's pretty much what it sounded like.
Well, there you go.
All right. Well, we're at 1 minute or 1 hour and 2 minutes. So I think we have met the listeners' expectations of show. Especially this is a bonus show anyway, so y'all can fuck right off.
1 hour of free boner show. Don't complain. Yeah.
And with that, I want to thank Dan for joining us again because he's fun to have to bounce off all our crazy shit on and read all about the bush. So thanks, Dan.
I mean, who doesn't enjoy being surrounded by the bush?
He took one for the team tonight. Appreciate it.
Go enjoy your brekkie in the bush and
I really want some brekkie.
hail Satan. Yeah.
Hail Satan. Hail Satin.
Done.
You want to announce your that thing that we do? Oh yeah, social media.
Oh, that. Dan can go first.
Does he want to announce?
Does he want people to shit on him on Instagram?
I thought he was secret.
Are you a secret, Dan?
Am I a
Hello?
secret? No.
He's gone.
He's a
No, I'm here,
secret,
I'm here.
a mystery.
Announce your socials.
I am. I accidentally announced my mic. Whatever. You can find me on Twitter at caffeinated_Dan. It's a whole bunch of D&D nerd stuff and huzzah.
Cool.
Shocker.
Hey, real quick, Dan, you mentioned something on our group chat at how you personally think that demons from the D&D could exist. And I wanted to tell you, and now I can't think of what it's called, but I'm really pissed that I can't think of the name of it. But there is a, belief that if enough people believe in something, that it actually creates it. So like the Mothman. So there's this...
Yes.
This theory, and there's a name for it, and I can't fucking think of the name of it, where people think that enough people believed in something.
Hallucinations?
No, it's not a hallucination. It actually creates it. It actually creates its existence.
Crowdfunding.
It just sounds amazing. Could you crowdfund a demon? Because that would be awesome.
No, that's really interesting, actually. This is going to get super nerdy for a second. There is actually a race in Dungeons and Dragons that kind of had this religious cleric came and pretended to be a priest of this god, and the race believed in it so much they actually believed God into existence.
That's what they're saying. That's what.
Yes.
So they're saying that this actually happens in real life. So you're saying, okay, millions of people are playing D&D, and there is a belief that if enough people believe in something, it can will it into existence. Like even just as simple as a Yeti or a Bigfoot or a Mothman, but enough people post on something or have a conversation about it, or like Thin Man or whatever the fuck his name is. And like they're saying that it's possible that with enough energy focused on something, you can actually will it into existence. So I find that really fascinating. When you said that, I was like, I had just been reading on that. And so
a lot of these monsters and demons that they have that I sent the link to, they actually take from like real world legends and beliefs and modify them slightly. So it fascinates me.
So then like this demon you guys modify it having a funny hat, and then it magically has a funny hat because all the D&D people believe that it has a funny hat.
Exactly.
See?
And then all the D&D people believe that these stories make panties drop, and then all the panties drop.
Right. You guys keep willing. You guys keep willing.
Let us have that.
Hasn't had it happen yet, but...
And on that note...
Dan's like, really?
Why is this happening?
Woo! Finally, my day is here.
Nerds shall inherit, or at least fertilize, or whatever it is. So,
oh,
pollinate, that's
Lord.
the word I was looking for. Fertilize.
I guess.
Oh, Moni, would you...
That's not how that's done. Nerds, that's not how that's done.
I mean... I have no words. I'm looking forward to all the weird tweets I'm going to get. Thank you. I feel as if every episode I come on is a general hazing of Dan, and I love it.
Well,
I enjoy it.
You have to
nice
haze.
Because Yardley doesn't tolerate our shit, which
No.
you shouldn't. And for Dan,
He's
just
got...
like, I'm a guest here. I'm a stranger in a strange
land. We're like,
land.
you signed up for this, Dan.
We'll act like Moni and Kristi.
Hey, you should be privileged to have our fuckery because
pollinate.
Awesome.
Pollinate with some brekkie in the bush, okay? Yeah. Pollinate, not fertilize.
That needs to be a new D&D move.
Pollinate in the...
Get brekkie in the bush. I'm in the middle of getting brekkie in a bush. I can't conquer a colony. I don't know what the fuck y'all do in Dungeons and Dragons, but that sounds pretty accurate.
Dragon has all kinds of sex with random people, so she can have some brekkie in a bush.
Oh, yes, she could. Actually, they come up.
That's happening.
Wow.
And on that note, I am Rebel Moni on Twitter. Don't at me with your weird fertilizer sex stories, weirdos. And Moni Bear on Instagram.
I am on Instagram, creepin@Kristi, and on Twitter @creepin_it. And like always, thank you guys for listening.
Tis the putting up with us.
Yeah, tis the season for us crazies to come out and let our crazy shine. So here we are. We're going to start doing some extra shows to fill the need
for Halloween time.
To fill your needs, and also apparently spend half of it with sexual innuendos. So with that, we love you guys. Drop us a good review to combat these people that don't like the fact that we say fuck a lot. And with that, creep it real, y'all.
Maybe some people need to get brekkie in a bush and just relax a little.
Or fertilized.